third regular session of the Management Board and second regular session of the Alliance Council of Ministers for Biosafety was held in Benin Republic. Extreme flows have contaminated Lake Retrouvez, also known as Senegal's Pink Lake. People of Montgomery Park, California grapple with violence that claimed the lives of 11 Asian Americans. Good morning, our dear viewers. You're welcome to the 1 p.m. news edition. Sorry, we had some technical issues. That's why we started some minutes late. Now to the news in detail, starting from the local scene. Now, it was the third regular session of the Management Board and the second regular session of the Alliance Council of Ministers for Biosafety in Western Central Africa. Now, as a prelude to these two events, the focus of the meeting was on biogas. The national press was invited to an explanatory meeting. More information in the following report. It was the third regular session of the Management Board and the second regular session of the Alliance Council of Ministers for Biosafety in Western Central Africa. As a prelude of these two events focused on biogas, the national press was invited to an explanatory meeting. The meeting was scheduled for the 27th of January 2023 in Cotonou, Benin Republic. The aim of the meeting is to evaluate the state of implementation of the first action plan and to provide new orientation to improve the results of the organization. Indeed, at the inaugural press conference, the various members of the Alliance emphasized the usefulness of the much-needed component for farms and other sectors. For the chairman of the Council of Ministers of the Alliance for Biodigesters in Western Central Africa, the institution is working to make this technology a developmental factor that will add value to the Beninese citizens. The minister had this to say.
Très jeune, puisque datant de 2-3 ans maintenant, où depuis le mois de décembre 2020, j'ai pris la tête donc de cette organisation, de cette institution.
It is a very young institution, not more than 2 or 3 years old now, and since December 2020, I became the head of this organization, of this regional institution that we want to have international recognition. The objective behind it is to work on the biodigester technology so as to accelerate social community development, especially in rural communities in Benin Republic. Through this technology, it would permit in a simple and natural way to obtain gas from various waste products at the same time. The gas is the kind of gas that can be used in the kitchen to cook, but also the final production can also aid in fertilizers that would allow the population increase their agricultural production. In this field, it would allow us to work on accelerating the development of this technology in such a way that the population will increase their revenue, and it will also add value to our country, and it will create more opportunities for development. The preparatory meeting will be held on Wednesday at the Benin Royal Hotel with the directors of the Alliance, followed by the second regular session of the Council of Ministers of the member states of the Alliance, which will be held on Friday, the 27th of January 2023. Crossing over to the news in brief. France stated on Thursday that it was recalling its ambassador from Burkina Faso a day after agreeing to demand from the ruling military government to pull out troops from the former French colony in Africa's Sahelian region. Now, Burkina Faso on Monday said it had asked France to withdraw within a month its contingent of some 400 troops currently stationed in the country, and on Wednesday, Paris agreed to do so. Now, still on the African scene, on to Senegal. Extreme floods have contaminated Lake Redba, also known as Senegal's Pink Lake. Now, sadly, salt farmers who depend on the lake for their livelihoods fear the heavy rains has lowered the lake's salinity forever, and that this year's salt harvest might just be their last. More information in the following report.
Lake Redba, locally known as La Croze, is one of Senegal's most visited sites. Its high salinity and rare microbean long fostered an algae that turned it pinkish in the right season. Its uniqueness made it one of the country's most visited attraction and was under consideration as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The lake once drew thousands of tourists from all over the world into its salt-laden shores.
When we used to swim when the salinity level was high, we used to float on the surface, and swimming had therapeutic virtues because it cured diseases. But what amazed people was to know how a person can float on the surface of a pink water. That's what excited people. Nowadays, we can't see that anymore.
Extreme flooding in the channel has now led to its contamination, turning its famous waters green. And aside from its shores being dotted with dead fish, the lake's water level also poses a threat to thousands who depend on it for their livelihoods.
Do you see the orange banner? That was my store. All these stores that you see have been flooded by water.
The recent floods in Senegal have also destroyed about 7,000 tons of salt worth around $1.7 million. And salt farmers say this could be their last harvest as the situation is worsening.
Since this water channel was dug, we have lost a lot of money that we don't even think we can recover. This is the first time that we've seen so much water come in here. We have witnessed many rainy seasons, but what is happening this year is unprecedented.
Salt farmers fear the changed composition of Lake Redba will make future harvests impossible. And if the waters of the lake remain their current and remarkable hue, boatmen and souvenir sellers fear for their businesses as they depend on tourists as their customers.
Still on the African scene, crossing to the news in brief, a bomb exploded at a market in Eastern Congo on Wednesday, the 25th of January, injuring at least a dozen people, authorities stated. Now, an unknown person detonated a bomb inside a bag in northern Kivu's Beni town, said Tharsis Katembo, a local official. The victims were taken to the hospital and investigation was underway, Katembo stated. Moving to Nigeria, the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has marked the opening of a $1.5 billion Chinese-funded deep sea port in the commercial hub of Lagos that authorities hope will help grow the West African nation Nigeria's ailing economy. Now, the ports can handle at least 2.5 million 20-foot standard containers per year. More information in the following report.
Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has marked the opening of a $1.5 billion Chinese-funded deep-sea port in the commercial hub of Lagos that authorities hope will help grow the West African nation's ailing economy. The Lekki deep-sea port is one of the biggest in West Africa and will create hundreds of thousands of jobs in addition to easing cargo congestion that costs billions of dollars in annual revenue, the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu said on Monday. The port can handle at least 2.5 million 20-foot standard containers per year and will be operated as a joint venture between the Nigerian government, Singapore-based Tolaram Group, and the Chinese state-owned China Harbour Engineering Company. Both foreign companies own a majority stake of 75% in the project. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy, but growth has been stalled for many years due to poor infrastructure and mismanagement. Although it has 6 major seaports, more than 80% of the country's imports are handled by just 2 of the ports in Lagos, where congestion has led to a massive loss in revenue, as cargoes are often diverted to other West African nations. Authorities say the new deep-sea port on the eastern edge of Lagos would divert traffic from congested ports and show up earnings, with expected economic benefit of more than $360 billion. Experts, however, argue it will make a minimal difference if existing pitfalls are not removed, including ensuring connection between port and inland areas, with the first ship due to dock on Sunday. Agriculture and trade are key drivers of Nigeria's economy, but widespread insecurity in the agricultural-rich north, dwindling foreign direct investment, and endemic corruption have slowed economic growth amid reduced earnings from crude oil. The government has turned to international lenders and funders to help grow the economy through critical projects, among them China, whose footprint on some of Nigeria's most important infrastructure projects, such as rail networks and airport terminals.
Crossing briefly to Southern Africa, from dairy farms unable to keep milk refrigerated to chicken suffocating en masse as ventilators fall idle, an energy crisis is taking a heavy toll in Southern Africa's food sector, industry groups reported. Now, record power cuts have caused the shortages of some staples, threatening price rises that could make some popular items too expensive for poor families, agricultural industry bodies stated. Now, scheduled blackouts known as load shedding have burdened Africa's most industrialized economy for years, with state-owned energy firm Eskom failing to keep pace with demand and maintain its aging coal power infrastructure. Away from that, Gay Sarambunu is used to toiling long days for a pittance. Now, he is a Malian living in France with no working papers, but it is a situation that occurs around the world. The difference here is that Sarambunu is one of the many army of construction workers preparing next year's Olympic Games in Paris.
Gay Sarambunu is used to toiling long days for a pittance. He is a Malian living in France with no working papers, but it is a situation that occurs all around the world. The difference here is that Sarambunu is one of an army of construction workers preparing next year's Olympic Games in Paris. The fact that France's upcoming sporting showcase is being put together with the help of illegal workers is becoming a source of political and social tension. For 3 months, Sarambunu, age 41, worked between 8 and 11-hour shifts for 80 euros per day. Obviously, overtime was never paid, he said ruefully.
In the morning, when you go to the door, you will see that all those who come, most of them are immigrants, undocumented workers. All these beautiful stadiums that people see, in reality, what lies behind, these stadiums are built on the backs of poor people, on the backs of people who don't have the power, the means. They discriminated against us, they have exploited us.
Trade unionist Bernard Thibault, who co-chairs the Paris 2024 Social Charter Monitoring Committee, says there is a great deal of hypocrisy on the part of the political authorities. As a sign of concern, the Labour Inspectorate has created a specialized unit that has been checking nearly one site a day for the past 2 years. In June, 9 irregular workers were identified on a site run by Solidio, the public company responsible for building facilities and infrastructure for the Olympics.
There are no paid leave, overtime is not paid, and overtime in the construction industry is consequent, especially for the Olympic Games, because things have to be done on time. So that's the big advantage of having this type of system in place and the use of undocumented workers. You really have to assume your responsibilities, because to go off rails like this, you can very well end up having this in our society, or what we have in Qatar.
At the same time, a local public prosecutor's office opened a preliminary investigation into the employment of foreigners without a permit in an organized gang. Solidio swiftly took the necessary steps by terminating the contract of the offending subcontractors, but also of the construction giants that used it, said Antonio Dushrish, the company's strategy director. Since then, procedures have been tightened up, he assured, while admitting it is impossible to set up a system entirely impervious to such fraud.
The boss will pay, but for example, you work for 2 months, then he pay you 1. That's how it is. For example, I work in December. He doesn't pay on the 1st or 5th, but until 20th or 25th of January. That's how it is. But I accept, because he knows my situation, and I know it too.
Malian workers want nothing more than to be regularized, so they do not have to live in fear of an identity check. The left-wing CGT union is preparing to submit an application for Sarambua to receive his working papers. if he gets the working papers within 18 months, the recent hardship will seem like nothing more than a bad dream. Viewers, you're still tuned in to Golfe TV Africa, and it's the newspaper review with Hazel OGOIGBE. Now we're getting started on the pages of the Namibian Sun. And the top story I'm going to be reading on the pages of the Namibian Sun says Namibian load shedding feared, and that's on the pages of the Namibian Sun. And if you look below the stories, it's talking about Namibian power paints hope on good relations with Eskom, and Namibian haunted by historical in development in the pages of Namibia. Now, South Africa has been suffering from power cuts, and this has terribly affected the businesses in Southern Africa. Now, still, of course, on the pages of the Namibian Sun, crossing over to this story. And the story says, I am not in politic bureau to fight hate battles. Hanse Himura speaks on the pages of the Namibian Sun. And the story on the pages of Namibian Sun reads, I'm going to take that story that says, and the story on the pages of Namibian Sun reads, Ministry says not yet to second booster. For more of the stories that are trending on the pages of the Namibian Sun, you could get a piece, or you could also get the pages of the Namibian Sun online. Now, crossing away from the Namibian Sun, let's cross over to the pages of the Nation Malawi. Now, today on the Nation Malawi, the story reads, and I'm seeing a top story talking about the water board on the pages of the Nation Malawi. Now, on the pages of the Nation Malawi, it's talking about water board, and it's saying, water board's eye tariff hike, but minister says cholera situation to determine. And we all know that in Malawi, there has been a very serious cholera crisis. You know, the vaccines are finished and the amount of cases are definitely increasing. And you know that when there's cholera, you should definitely have water. Now, right now, there has been a hike in the tariff of water in Malawi. Now, let's now talk about pension. It says civil servants to court over pension scheme. Civil servants to go to court over pension scheme in Malawi. And the last story I'll take on the pages of the Nation Malawi says, court to manage 50% drug budget, which is a national story on the pages of the Nation Malawi. Now, crossing away from the Nation Malawi, let's see what the stories that are trending on the front page Liberia. Now, on the front page Liberia, the front page is one of Liberia's top daily newspaper, keeping us abreast on what is happening in Liberia today. And the story says, from slavery to freedom. And another one, this is a rhetorical question that says, where is money for COVID-19 testing going to? A lot of some African countries have squandered the money that was put in during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the story says, NEC upholds Bility's leadership on the pages of the front page. And this story reads, and it says, NPFL General on TRC most notorious, List Melvin Tobambi dies, and anger victim says he escaped justice on the pages of the front page Liberia. Now, crossing away from the front page Liberia, let's see the stories that are trending on the front page of the Citizen Tanzania. It's always amazing stories that trend on the front page of the Citizen Tanzania. Let's just clean this away. Now, on the pages of the Citizen Tanzania, this story is talking about profit on the pages of the Citizen Tanzania, and this story says,
That is, I'm taking the story that says, windfall as the NMB's net profit skyrockets to 429 shillings. And still on the pages of the Citizen Tanzania, the story reads, do not rush big projects. Oxford economics professor Stefan Deacon says Tanzania needs a cautious approach to implementing mega projects, advising Tanzania apparently against embarking on too many projects at once and calling for sensible management. Now, still on the pages of the Citizen Tanzania, the story says, ways to reduce air travel costs in Eastern Africa. One of the menaces of the African continent is such that when one African country, when you're an African or you're in Nigeria and you want to travel to another African country, the price is really, really, really ridiculous. Now let's cross over to the pages of the Punch Nigeria. Let's see the stories that are making the rounds in Nigeria today. Now, Nigeria the political scene is really, really heated up. The politics heated up, considering the fact that the elections are just some days, weeks away. Now, let's talk about the pages of the Punch Nigeria. The story says, mega churches and schools bar old Naira note payments and offerings. We all know that right now in Nigeria, there's a new currency, rather the Naira note has been rebranded, and the Central Bank of Nigeria has given Nigerians deadlines on the date of expenditure, like the last date you would be able to spend the Punch Nigeria gives details. And still on the pages of the Punch, story says, Katsina youth protest hardship and stone officials during Buhari's visit. On the pages of the Punch, still the story says, ICPC rearrest former JAMB registrar. On the pages of the Punch Nigeria. Now let's talk about the market. It says, traders bemoan losses as fire guts Lagos market. On the pages of the Punch Nigeria, and let me lift this up so that we'll be able to see better. On the pages of the Punch, this story says, traders, petrol scarcity protesters block Lagos and Benin Expressway. We know that in Nigeria right now there has been a conflict of petrol scarcity, and protesters have blocked the Lagos-Benin Expressway, one of the major expressways in Nigeria. And I'm going to be moving away from the pages of the Punch Nigeria, crossing over to This Day Nigeria. Still on the Nigerian scene, let's see the stories that are trending on the pages of This Day. On the pages of This Day, the stories that are trending goes thus, and it says Buhari takes ride after inaugurating phase 1 of Lagos Blue Rail, and this one says Emefiele forecloses extension of January 31st for return of old banknotes. Let's cross away from that, crossing over to the last dailies for today, which is the pages of the Guardian Post Cameroon. What does the Guardian Post Cameroon have in store for us today? We're going to see that on the pages of the Guardian Post. Now, on the pages of the Guardian Post, the story reads, Amnesty International shames Yaoundé for keeping MRC protesters in jail. And still on the pages, it says, Ukrainian president picks Dr. Fumonyon as pioneer ambassador. And this last story says, Lekki traditional rulers reject Martinez and Zogo's corpse. On the pages of The Nation, Malawi. Pardon me, the Guardian Post Cameroon. And our dear viewers, this is where we're going to conclude today's edition of the African Newspaper Review. We're also concluding the news on Golfe TV Africa. Thanks for tuning in. I am Hazel OGOIGBE. Enjoy the rest of your day.